Close your eyes and picture a perfect sphere. Not almost perfect, not close enough, mathematically perfect. Every point on its surface exactly the same distance from the center. No bumps, no irregularities, no variations larger than a millimeter across an entire surface area of several square meters. Now imagine carving that sphere from solid granite with stone tools. No lasers, no computer-guided machinery, no metal chisels, no measuring instruments beyond what you can make with your hands. Just stone hammering against stone, hour after hour, year after year, until something weighing 15 tons becomes so perfectly round that modern archaeologists measuring it with laser scanners can barely detect any deviation from true spherical geometry. Impossible, right? And yet, in the rainforests and river deltas of southern Costa Rica, scattered across cleared plantations and half buried in jungle undergrowth, hundreds of these impossible objects wait, silent, perfect, unexplained. If you're here to fall asleep, you're in exactly the right place. Let this mystery wash over you like a gentle tide. Subscribe if you'd like, and leave a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing the global map of people drifting off to these ancient puzzles. Sao Paulo at midnight, Melbourne at dawn, London in the quiet hours before sunrise. Now, let me take you somewhere warm, somewhere green, somewhere that holds one of the strangest archaeological mysteries in the Americas. The year is 1939. The place is the Diquís Delta in southern Costa Rica, where three rivers, the Taraba, Sierpa, and Grande Taraba wind through dense jungle before emptying into the Pacific Ocean. The land here is flat, swampy, covered in vegetation so thick that visibility extends only a few meters in any direction. The air is heavy, wet, filled with the constant sound of insects and birds. The United Fruit Company has arrived. They're not here for archaeology. Vast plantations carved from rainforest, acre after acre of land cleared, drained, planted with neat rows of fruit destined for markets thousands of miles away. The workers move through the jungle with machetes and chainsaws, cutting, burning, bulldozing. Everything must go. Trees, vines, roots, stones, especially stones. The machines hit them constantly. Big ones, small ones, rounded ones that seem oddly regular. At first, they're just obstacles, annoyances that damage equipment and slow progress. The workers pile them aside, roll them into ditches, sometimes break them apart with dynamite if they're too stubborn to move. But someone notices. Someone always notices. These aren't ordinary stones. They're not random boulders deposited by ancient rivers or volcanic activity. They're shaped, deliberately, carefully, and many of them are almost perfectly round. Word spreads. Local archaeologists arrive, then international researchers. They walk through the banana plantations, past the neat rows of fruit trees, and find themselves staring at something that shouldn't exist. Not here. Not made by a culture that had no written language, no metal tools more sophisticated than copper and gold ornaments, no wheel, no large domesticated animals, perfect stone spheres, some small enough to hold in your hand, others taller than a grown human. The largest weighing more than a modern automobile. All of them impossibly round. Doris Stone, an archaeologist and daughter of a United Fruit Company executive, was one of the first to document them systematically. In the 1940s, she walked the plantations, cataloging spheres, taking measurements, interviewing workers about where they'd found them. Many had already been destroyed by then, blown apart by dynamite, rolled into rivers, buried under plantation roads. The ones that survived told a story written in geometry. Stone, the archaeologist, measured them carefully. She noted their positions, their sizes, their relationships to each other. Some sat alone, others appeared in groups, arranged in lines or patterns. A few were still partially buried, their tops emerging from the earth like strange planets rising from an ancient sea. She took rubbings of their surfaces, smooth, remarkably smooth. Run your hand across them and you feel none of the pitting, none of the roughness you'd expect from stone that's been exposed to tropical weather for centuries. It's like touching polished marble, except these aren't marble. They're gabbro, a tough volcanic stone, granite, limestone, materials that don't polish easily, that resist shaping, that should show tool marks and irregularities. But they don't. The spheres are smooth as glass, round as planets, perfect as if they'd been turned on some cosmic lathe by hands that understood geometry better than seems possible for a culture working with nothing but stone tools and infinite patience. Who made these? That question has haunted researchers for more than 80 years. Because the people who carved these perfect spheres left no written records. They built no massive temples covered in explanatory inscriptions. They didn't carve their creation myths into the stones themselves. They simply made them, placed them in careful arrangements, and then vanished from history before Europeans arrived to ask questions. Picture yourself standing in one of those early excavation sites. It's 1948. The sun hasn't yet risen high enough to burn through the morning mist that clings to the ground. You're standing in a cleared area, banana plants stretching away in every direction. The soil is dark, rich, still damp from last night's rain. In front of you, half buried in earth, is a stone sphere nearly 2 meters in diameter, 6 feet across, weighing perhaps 8 tons. Its surface is covered in a thin layer of moss and dirt, but where someone has cleaned a patch, you can see the stone beneath, dark gray, smooth, curved with such precision that your eye can't find any flaw. You walk around it slowly. From every angle, it looks the same, perfectly round. No flat spots, no obvious tool marks, no inscription, no decoration, no hint of why someone would invest months, maybe years, of work into creating something with no apparent practical purpose. Behind it, barely visible in the undergrowth, there are others, a line of them decreasing in size. The largest here at the front, then slightly smaller ones behind it, creating a row that stretches maybe 30 meters before disappearing into the jungle. Were they aligned with something? The sunrise? The stars? A sacred mountain in the distance? You can't tell. The jungle has reclaimed too much. The banana plantation has disrupted whatever original context existed. All you have are the spheres themselves, silent witnesses to a vanished world. And one simple, haunting question: how did they make them so perfect? As you drift towards sleep, hold that image in your mind. A stone sphere emerging from jungle earth, perfectly round, impossibly smooth, made by hands that have turned to dust, for reasons no one alive can fully explain. We're going to spend the next few hours exploring every aspect of this mystery, the people who made them, the techniques they might have used, the theories about their purpose, the tragedy of their destruction, the handful that survived, and the questions that still keep archaeologists awake at night. But for now, just breathe. Feel the weight of that stone in your imagination, 8 tons of granite, carved into mathematical perfection by a culture that lived and died before Columbus ever dreamed of crossing an ocean. The spheres are still there, scattered across Costa Rica, some in museums, some in town squares, a few still sitting in the jungle exactly where they were placed centuries ago, waiting patiently for someone to understand why they exist. Let's begin to unravel this mystery together. There are, by the most recent count, approximately 300 known stone spheres scattered across the Diquís, Delta, and surrounding regions of southern Costa Rica. 300. That's not a handful of curious anomalies. That's a tradition, an industry, a cultural imperative that lasted for generations. They range in size from small, perhaps 10 centimeters in diameter, small enough to cradle in your palm, to absolutely massive. The largest known sphere measures approximately 220-66 meters in diameter and weighs an estimated 25 tons. 25 tons. That's roughly the weight of 4 full-grown elephants, or about 3 times the weight of the largest stones at Stonehenge. And it's a sphere, not a rough ball, not a vaguely rounded boulder, a geometric sphere, accurate to within centimeters across its entire surface. Let that settle into your mind as you relax. Imagine the largest stone sphere you've ever seen. Now imagine it's not made of concrete cast in a modern factory with precise molds. It's carved, shaped by hand from solid volcanic rock that fights every strike of the hammer, every scraping pass of the grinding stone. The precision is what stops researchers in their tracks. In the 1970s, archaeologist Samuel Lothrop conducted detailed measurements of several spheres using the best equipment available at the time. He measured diameters at multiple points, calculated surface variations, assessed roundness. His conclusion: many of the spheres deviated from perfect spherical geometry by less than 2 centimeters across their entire surface. 2 centimeters on a stone that might be 2 meters wide. That's a precision of about 1%, better than many supposedly perfectly round objects you encounter in daily life. Better than most wheels. Better than many ball bearings made before the age of computer-controlled manufacturing. More recent studies using laser scanning technology have confirmed and refined Lothrop's findings. Some spheres, particularly the medium-sized ones ranging from 1 to 2 meters in diameter, show deviations of less than 1 centimeter from perfect spheres. 1 centimeter on a stone weighing several tons. How? That's not a rhetorical question. that's the central engineering mystery of these objects. Because achieving that level of precision requires constant, accurate measurement throughout the carving process. You can't just eyeball it. You can't rough shape a boulder and hope it comes out round. You need to know at every stage of the work whether you're removing material evenly from all sides, whether one hemisphere is becoming slightly larger than the other, whether there's a developing bulge here, a shallow depression there. Modern sculptors creating spheres use precision tools. Use calipers, compasses, laser levels. They work from mathematical calculations, removing material in carefully planned sequences. The ancient Diquís people had none of these things. No metal tools, no measuring instruments beyond what they could improvise from wood and cord. No written mathematical system as far as we know. Just stone tools, patient hands, and some method, some technique that we still don't fully understand. The stones themselves tell part of the story. Most of the spheres are made from gabbro, a granular igneous rock, similar to granite. It's hard, very hard. On the Mohs scale of mineral hardness, it rates around 6 to 7. For context, steel is about 4 to 4.5. You cannot carve gabbro with steel tools, not efficiently. You certainly can't polish it with them. The Diquís people didn't have steel anyway. They had stone. Specifically, they had other types of harder stone that could be used to work the gabbro. Quartzite, perhaps. Basalt hammerstones. And they had one advantage that we've largely abandoned in our age of machines: time. Imagine the process. You start with a boulder, perhaps already somewhat rounded by river action over millennia, but somewhat rounded and spherical to within 1 centimeter are vastly different things. You begin to work it, not frantically, not with any sense that this needs to be finished by next week or next month. This might take years, a lifetime even. The sphere might be started by one artisan and finished by another, or by their children. First comes rough shaping. Hammerstones breaking away the most irregular parts. Slowly, patiently, you create something that's vaguely ball-shaped. This might take months. The sound would be constant: crack, 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 stone on stone. Chips flying, dust rising. Then comes refinement, smaller stones, more careful strikes. You're not removing large chunks anymore. You're shaving away irregularities, smoothing curves, beginning to create something that might be called round. And then comes the mysterious part. The final shaping, the polishing, the transformation from approximately round to geometrically precise. Some researchers believe they used a method involving repeated heating and cooling. The principle is simple: heat the stone, then douse it with cold water. The thermal shock creates tiny fractures in the surface, making it easier to remove thin layers of material. Others think abrasive sand played a crucial role. Wet sand rubbed across the surface, hour after hour, day after day, slowly grinding down high spots, smoothing curves, removing the last imperfections. Still others propose that they may have used wooden templates or measuring devices we haven't found. Perhaps a frame construction that could be placed over the sphere at various angles, with a weighted cord hanging down. If the cord doesn't touch the sphere at the same height from all positions, you know where material still needs to be removed. The truth is, we don't know. The actual technique died with the last artisans who practiced it. What we do know is that it worked spectacularly, hundreds of times. The spheres aren't all made from the same stone. While most are gabbro, some are made from different materials: limestone, shell-rich, sedimentary rock, even sandstone, though these softer stones have weathered more severely over the centuries. This suggests that the choice of stone wasn't purely practical. If it were, they would have used only the best material, the hardest, most durable stone available. Instead, they used whatever was at hand, whatever could be shaped, even if it meant the final product would be more vulnerable to erosion. This tells us something important. The spheres weren't just feats of engineering. They were culturally meaningful. The act of creating them, the presence of the sphere itself, mattered more than whether it would last forever. Their surfaces are fascinating. The best preserved examples are almost glass smooth. Run your fingers across them in your imagination. There's a slight coolness, the temperature of stone that's been shaded from direct sun. The surface is so smooth that your fingerprints catch on nothing, sliding freely across curves that seem machine-made. But look closer, really close. In the right light, you can sometimes see faint lines, striations. These are the ghosts of the grinding process, the traces of sand or stone tools moving back and forth across the surface thousands of times. They're oriented in curves that follow the sphere's contour, suggesting the artisans worked in systematic patterns, always aware of the overall geometry. Some spheres show damage, cracks from dynamite, chips from tractors, pitting from weathering. A few have been vandalized, broken open by treasure hunters, convinced that something valuable must be hidden inside. They found nothing. The spheres are solid stone all the way through. No hollow chambers, no hidden treasures. Just rock shaped into perfection for reasons those vandals never understood. The size distribution is interesting. There's no standard. Some groups of spheres show a range from very small to very large, suggesting perhaps that different sizes serve different purposes or held different meanings. The largest spheres tend to be found in what appear to be important or central locations, though so much of the original context has been destroyed that we're often guessing. What's clear is that making a large sphere was exponentially more difficult than making a small one. Volume increases with the cube of the radius. A sphere twice as wide has 8 times the volume, 8 times as much stone to remove, 8 times as much surface area to perfect. The largest spheres represent thousands of hours of work, perhaps tens of thousands. They are monuments not just to skill, but to dedication, to the cultural importance of whatever these objects represented. As you lie there in the darkness, imagine those artisans. Imagine the sound of stone on stone echoing through the jungle. Imagine the dust, the aching muscles. See the small, incremental progress, day after day, month after month, and imagine the moment when it's finished, when the last rough patch has been smoothed away, when you step back and see, for the first time, the completed sphere catching the light, perfectly round, impossibly smooth. What did they feel in that moment? We'll never know. But we can see what they created, and we can wonder. To understand the spheres, we need to understand the people who made them. But here's the problem. The Diquís culture left almost no written records, no carved histories, no explanatory texts. What we know comes from archaeology, from fragments of pottery, from post holes in the ground, from the spheres themselves, and from the observations of Spanish conquistadors who arrived after the culture had already begun to collapse. It's like trying to understand a conversation by examining the punctuation marks. Still, we can piece together a picture, partial, incomplete, but real. The Diquís Delta in southern Costa Rica is a landscape of rivers. The Taraba, the Sirpa, the Grande Taraba. They wind through lowlands that flood seasonally, creating a patchwork of marshes, lagoons, and slightly elevated ground. The climate is tropical, hot, humid, the kind of wet heat that makes everything grow. This is where the sphere makers lived, roughly between 500 C and 1500 C, 1,000 years of cultural continuity. For context, that's longer than the time between the Norman conquest of England and today, longer than the entire history of the United States by several centuries. They weren't a single unified empire. They were a network of chiefdoms, complex societies led by elite families who controlled trade, organized labor, and maintained social hierarchies. Archaeologists call this level of social organization a complex chiefdom, more sophisticated than simple tribal societies, but not quite the centralized state structures of the Maya or Inca. The evidence for this complexity is everywhere in the archaeological record. Large residential platforms built from river cobbles and earth. Cemeteries showing clear distinctions in burial wealth, some individuals interred with elaborate gold ornaments, jade beads, and stone tools, while others had simple graves with few or no goods. They traded extensively. Gold and jade objects from the Diquís region have been found hundreds of kilometers away. In return, they receive goods from distant regions, certain types of pottery, obsidian for cutting tools, decorative items. This wasn't a simple, isolated culture scraping by in the jungle. This was a sophisticated society with surplus resources, specialized craftspeople, and the organizational capacity to undertake massive construction projects, like carving 200 stone spheres and arranging them in patterns that might have encoded social or cosmic significance. What did they eat? Mostly plants. The Diquís region is remarkably fertile. The annual flooding of the rivers deposited nutrient-rich sediment across the delta. The people took advantage of this by practicing a form of raised field agriculture. They built elevated planting areas separated by canals, creating a landscape that was half garden, half waterway. In these raised fields, they grew maize, corn, beans, squash, yucca, and other crops. The canals between the fields served multiple purposes: drainage during heavy rains, irrigation during dry spells, and likely fish farming. Freshwater fish, mollusks, and crustaceans would have been abundant in these managed waterways. They also hunted and gathered. The jungle provided peccary, a type of wild pig, deer, tapir, birds, and countless fruits, nuts, and plant materials. The nearby Pacific coast offered fish, sea turtles, and shellfish. Food wasn't scarce. This wasn't a population on the edge of starvation, desperately scratching out survival. They had enough surplus to support artisans who did nothing but carve stone, enough surplus to invest years of labor into creating objects with no obvious practical function. Their houses were built on raised platforms. This was practical, elevating structures above the wet ground prevented flooding and discouraged insects. The platforms were constructed from river cobbles carefully arranged and packed with earth. On top of these platforms, they built structures from wood, bamboo, and palm thatch. None of these organic materials survived, but the platforms remain, marked by patterns of post holes where wooden supports once stood. The largest platforms likely held the homes of elite families. These could be substantial, covering hundreds of square meters. Smaller platforms held the homes of commoners, and scattered among the residential areas were special structures, possibly temples, community houses, or workshops where skilled artisans practiced their crafts. The spheres themselves were found in association with these elite residential platforms. Not randomly scattered, not hidden in the jungle, placed deliberately in front of or near the homes of important families. This is crucial. The spheres weren't religious icons hidden away in temples. They weren't boundary markers stuck in the middle of nowhere. They were public, visible, associated with power and status. The Diquís people worked in gold and jade with remarkable skill. Archaeological excavations have recovered hundreds of intricate gold ornaments, pendants shaped like eagles, frogs, and jaguars, nose rings, ear spools, tiny bells that would have jingled with every movement. They used a sophisticated technique called lost wax casting. You sculpt an object in wax, encase it in clay, heat it until the wax melts away, then pour molten gold into the cavity left behind. When the clay is broken away, you have a gold replica of your original wax sculpture. This isn't simple metalworking. It requires precise temperature control, knowledge of alloys. They often mixed gold with copper to change its properties, and an aesthetic sensibility that can envision a finished piece before it exists. If they could do this with gold, if they could manipulate metal at temperatures exceeding 1000 degrees Celsius, if they could conceptualize and execute complex three-dimensional designs, then their ability to create perfect stone spheres becomes less mysterious and more logical. These weren't primitive people lucky enough to make a few round rocks. These were master craftspeople with sophisticated technical knowledge passed down through generations. Their society was stratified. We know this from burial patterns. Elite burials in the Diquís region are distinctive. The body might be placed in a stone-lined tomb, surrounded by valuable objects, gold ornaments, jade beads, carved stone tools, elaborate pottery. Some elite individuals were buried with retainers, other people sacrificed or choosing to die with their leader, ensuring they would serve in the afterlife. Common burials are simpler, a body placed in the earth, perhaps wrapped in cloth or a woven mat, with few or no grave goods. This tells us that wealth, power, and status were real and recognized categories in Diquís society. It also suggests that the creation of stone spheres might have been a way for elite families to display their wealth and power. Look what we can afford to commission. Look how many workers we can mobilize. Look at this impossible object that required years of specialized labor. The spheres become, in this interpretation, frozen displays of social power, prestige objects that broadcast status to anyone who saw them. But there's another layer here. The Diquís people lived in a landscape they understood as alive. Rivers weren't just water flowing downhill, they were spiritual entities. Mountains weren't just geology, they were the homes of ancestors or gods. Animals weren't just food or danger, they were kin, beings with their own agency and power. This animistic worldview is common in indigenous cultures throughout the Americas. It suggests that the spheres might have had spiritual significance beyond mere status display. Perhaps they represented celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, planets. Perhaps they were symbolic eggs representing fertility, creation, the potential for life. Perhaps they were stones tamed from chaos, shaped by human hands into perfect order, demonstrating humanity's ability to impose form on formless nature. We're guessing. But educated guessing based on comparative ethnography, on what we know about other indigenous American cultures, on hints from the archaeological record. What's certain is that for the Diquís people, these spheres mattered intensely. enough to justify enormous investments of time, resources, and skill, enough to place them in prominent positions associated with the most important members of society. Then, sometime in the 15th and early 16th centuries, the culture began to change. Spanish conquistadors arrived in Central America in the early 1500s. They brought diseases that spread faster than the conquistadors themselves: smallpox, measles, influenza. Indigenous populations with no prior exposure and no immunity died in staggering numbers. They also brought warfare, slavery, and social disruption that shattered existing trade networks and power structures. By the time Spanish observers paid attention to the Diquís region, the culture that had created the stone spheres was already in collapse. The spheres stood in overgrown plazas, their meaning fading from memory. The techniques for making them were being lost as master artisans died without passing on their knowledge. Within a few generations, the tradition ended completely. The spheres remained silent and perfect, waiting for someone to ask why they existed. It would be more than 400 years before anyone really tried to answer that question. Let's return to the central question. How did they actually make these spheres so perfectly round? This isn't an abstract puzzle. This is a concrete engineering challenge with real constraints. No metal tools harder than copper, no precision measuring instruments, no written mathematics. And yet, results that rival modern manufacturing. Researchers have proposed several methods, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. Let's walk through them slowly, one by one, as you settle deeper into rest. Method 1, controlled pecking and grinding. This is the most straightforward theory and probably closest to the truth for at least part of the process. You start with a boulder, ideally one that's already somewhat rounded by natural processes, river action, weathering, erosion. This gives you a head start. First stage, rough shaping by percussion. You use a hard hammerstone, perhaps basalt or quartzite, to strike the boulder repeatedly. Each strike chips away small pieces of stone. You work systematically, rotating the boulder, striking high spots, gradually creating something approximately spherical. This is brutally hard work. Stone is unforgiving. Miss your aim, and you might create a deep gouge that takes weeks to grind out. Strike too hard, and you might crack the entire piece, forcing you to start over. But with patience, months of patience, you can create a rough sphere. Not perfect, maybe accurate to within 10 or 15 centimeters, but recognizably round. Second stage, fine grinding. Now the hammerstones are set aside. You switch to abrasive materials. Sand, probably, perhaps mixed with water to create a grinding paste. You would need a technique for applying this evenly. Some researchers suggest using wooden or leather tools as intermediaries. Imagine a curved wooden paddle with wet sand on its surface. You rub this across the stone back and forth, following the curves, slowly abrading away high spots. The key would be constantly rotating the sphere, never grinding one area too long, always working to maintain overall roundness. This stage might take even longer than rough shaping. Years, potentially. Third stage, polishing. Similar to grinding, but with finer abrasives. Very fine sand, possibly crushed plant materials, more leather tools, more patient rubbing, day after day after day. Eventually, the surface becomes smooth, reflective, almost. The stone has been transformed from rough boulder to geometric perfection. Method 2. Thermal treatment. Stone responds to heat. Heat it up and it expands. Cool it suddenly and it contracts. If you repeat this cycle, the stone develops microfractures on its surface. These fractures make it easier to remove thin layers of material. The Diquís people certainly had fire. They could have built fires directly on the surface of a sphere, heating sections of it, then dousing the hot stone with cold water from the river. The thermal shock would weaken the surface, allowing easier pecking or scraping. Evidence for this method is suggestive but not conclusive. Some spheres show what might be fire cracking patterns, though these could also result from forest fires or other natural causes long after the spheres were carved. The advantage of thermal treatment is that it would speed up the process significantly. Instead of months of brutal pecking to remove each centimeter of stone, you could weaken the surface, chip it away, weaken it again, chip again, a cycle measured in days rather than months. The disadvantage is control. Heat a stone unevenly and it might crack in unexpected ways. You could lose weeks of work in a moment. Method 3, template-guided shaping. Here's a cleverer possibility. What if they had a way to measure the sphere constantly during production? Imagine a simple device. And a frame made from two straight wooden poles lashed together at the top, like an upside-down V. From the apex, you hang a weighted cord, a plumb line. You place this frame over your sphere at various positions. If the sphere is truly round, the hanging cord should just barely touch the surface at every position, and the distance from the apex to the surface should be constant, equal to the radius. If the cord hangs free without touching at one position, that section of the sphere bulges out. Mark it. Grind it down. Check again. If the cord is pushed aside, that section is too flat or too low. You need to remove material from surrounding areas to maintain overall roundness. This method would allow relatively precise shaping even without modern instruments. It's simple, elegant, and relies on nothing but wood, cord, and gravity. No direct evidence exists that the Diquís people used such templates. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Wooden tools would have rotted away centuries ago, leaving no trace. And something like this must have been used. You cannot achieve the precision we see in these spheres by eye alone. At some point, they needed to measure. This is one plausible way. Method 4. Master artisan expertise. Never underestimate the human eye and hand trained through years of practice. A master sculptor who has spent decades carving stone develops an almost supernatural sense for form. They can see imperfections that untrained eyes miss. Their hands know how hard to strike, where to grind, when to stop. This expertise is built slowly across lifetimes. An apprentice might start by making small spheres, practicing the techniques, developing the muscle memory and visual judgment. After years, they graduate to larger projects. After decades, they might be trusted with the largest spheres, the ones that will stand in front of the chief's residence, representing the power and prestige of the entire community. In a culture where stone carving was a respected profession passed down through families, this accumulation of expertise would be profound. The master carvers weren't following instruction manuals. They were following generations of internalized knowledge, the collective wisdom of dozens of artisans who had spent their lives understanding how stone behaves. This isn't mystical, it's skill, refined to an extraordinary degree. We've lost most manual craft traditions in the age of machines. We've forgotten what human hands can achieve when trained for years in a single specialized task. The sphere makers remind us. The quarry question, where did the stone come from? Most of the spheres are made from gabbro. This stone doesn't occur naturally in the Diquís Delta. The nearest known sources are in the Talamanca Mountains, 50 to 80 kilometers away. 50 kilometers through mountainous jungle, carrying multi-ton boulders. How? They might have used rivers. Float the boulders down rivers during high water, controlling them with ropes, guiding them through rapids, eventually beaching them near the work sites. This would be dangerous, difficult work. You'd need teams of people coordinating along the riverbanks. Ropes would break. Boulders would get lodged on obstacles. Some would be lost entirely, but it's possible. Indigenous peoples throughout the Americas moved massive stones using rivers. The technique works if you're patient and willing to accept losses. Alternatively, they might have rough-shaped the spheres near the quarries, reducing the weight before transport. Start with a 50-ton boulder, rough carve it into an approximate sphere weighing 25 tons, then move that, still incredibly difficult, but somewhat more manageable. Then, once the rough sphere reached the delta, final shaping and polishing could happen on site. We don't know which method they used. Maybe both. Maybe other techniques we haven't thought of. What's clear is that the stone had to travel. The spheres weren't carved from local materials. They required expeditions, planning, coordinated effort across distances. This reinforces what we already suspected. These weren't casual projects. These were major undertakings that required significant organizational capacity. The lost knowledge here's what's frustrating. Someone knew exactly how to do this. Not as a mystery, not as a puzzle, but as a straightforward technical procedure. Probably multiple people knew. There were likely schools or apprenticeship systems where the knowledge was passed down. First you do this, then this. When you see this pattern in the stone, you've gone far enough. Watch out for this common mistake. Here's how to recover if you make an error. All of that knowledge, accumulated over centuries, refined across generations, gone, lost when the Spanish diseases swept through, lost when the culture collapsed, lost when the last master carvers died without apprentices to carry on. We're left reverse engineering their methods, making educated guesses, trying techniques and seeing what works. It's like finding a master chef's signature dish, but no recipe. You can analyze the ingredients, try to replicate the flavors, get close. But you'll never quite match the original because you're missing the subtle techniques, the precise timing, the tricks learned through experience that were never written down. The spheres stand as monuments not just to achievement, but to loss, to knowledge that died with its keepers. As your eyes grow heavy, picture the artisans again, bent over their work, grinding, shaping, measuring by methods we can only guess at. The rasp of stone on stone, the shower of dust in afternoon light, the slow, patient transformation of chaos into order. They knew how to do something we've forgotten. And their legacy is these perfect spheres scattered across Costa Rica, still posing their silent question. How? The how is fascinating, but the why cuts deeper. Why would any culture invest thousands of hours of skilled labor into creating perfect stone spheres, objects that can't be used as tools, that can't shelter you from rain, that won't feed you or clothe you or protect you from enemies? What purpose justifies the cost? Let's explore the theories, from the mundane to the cosmic, as you drift deeper into rest. Theory 1. Status symbols, the most straightforward interpretation. The spheres were displays of wealth and power. Think about it. If you're the chief of a Diquís community, you need ways to demonstrate your status. You can wear gold ornaments, and the elites did. You can live on a larger platform, and they did. You can be buried with more grave goods, and they were. But those things are private or temporary. A gold pendant might be impressive when you wear it, but it's small. A large house displays wealth, but only to people who visit. A massive stone sphere placed in front of your residence? That's permanent. That's visible to everyone who passes by. That's a statement that can't be ignored. My family commanded the resources to commission this. We hired the artisans. We organized the labor to transport the stone. We had enough surplus food to support workers who spent years on this project. We are powerful, and we want you to remember it. In this interpretation, the spheres are like medieval cathedrals or modern skyscrapers. They serve social and political functions by embodying abstract concepts, faith, power, wealth in permanent, impressive form. The size variations make sense under this theory. Small spheres for minor chiefs, larger ones for more powerful families. The truly massive spheres for the most elite lineages, the ones who could afford to make a statement no one else could match. Supporting evidence, the spheres are consistently found near elite residential platforms, not randomly scattered. They're in the most public, visible locations. They're arranged in patterns that suggest careful placement, not casual disposal. This is status architecture. Theory 2. Celestial markers. What if the spheres represented heavenly bodies? Many cultures have looked at the night sky and seen gods, stories, calendars. The sun and moon are particularly significant. They govern day and night, seasons, tides. They're the most obvious celestial objects, and they're round. Perhaps the stone spheres were representations of the sun and moon, or of planets, or of a cosmology where celestial bodies were born from stone, shaped by divine or ancestral hands into perfection. Some researchers have noted that groups of spheres are sometimes arranged in lines or patterns. Could these arrangements mirror constellations? Could they be star maps, permanent records of the night sky as it appeared centuries ago? The challenge with this theory is proving it. We'd need to show that sphere arrangements align with specific astronomical phenomena in ways that can't be explained by chance. A few researchers have tried, but the evidence remains ambiguous. Most of the original arrangements were destroyed or disturbed before proper documentation. We're working with fragments, trying to reconstruct patterns from incomplete data. Still, the idea is compelling. The sphere as microcosm of cosmos. The act of creating spherical perfection as an echo of divine creation. The placement of spheres as a way to bring celestial order to earthly space. It's poetic. It might even be true. Theory 3. Boundary markers. Perhaps the spheres marked territory. The Diquís region was divided among different chiefdoms, different lineages competing for resources and power. Clear boundaries would be important. Knowing where your territory ends and your neighbor's begins prevents disputes. Stone spheres, especially large ones, make excellent boundary markers. They're impossible to miss. They're too heavy to move casually, so they stay where they're placed. And if they're also status symbols representing the power of the lineage that controls that territory, even better. This theory is harder to evaluate because so many spheres have been moved from their original locations. But some researchers have noted that certain sphere groups seem to cluster along what might have been territorial boundaries or important routes. Imagine walking along a jungle path that connects two communities. At a certain point, you see a line of spheres increasing in size. The largest 2 meters tall, impossible to ignore, sits right in the path. You're crossing into someone else's territory now. The stone makes sure you know it. Theory 4. Cosmological, religious objects. Let's go deeper. What if the spheres weren't representations of celestial bodies, but were themselves sacred objects? In many indigenous cosmologies, the world begins from chaos, formless, disordered. Creation is the process of imposing form, bringing order from chaos. The gods shape the cosmos, separate sky from earth, create structure and meaning. A perfectly round stone could symbolize this act of creation, taking a rough, chaotic boulder and transforming it into geometric perfection mirrors the divine act of bringing order to the universe. In this interpretation, the sphere makers weren't just craftspeople, they were enacting sacred ritual through their work. Each strike of the hammer, each day of grinding, was an act of devotion. The finished sphere was proof that humans could participate in the creative ordering of the cosmos. Supporting this, the immense care and precision invested in the spheres. If they were merely status symbols, good enough would be sufficient. But many spheres are far more perfect than necessary for mere display. The precision suggests that the exact roundness mattered spiritually, not just aesthetically. Theory 5. Ancestor stones. Another possibility draws from the animistic worldview common in indigenous American cultures. What if the spheres represented ancestors? Many cultures believe that powerful individuals don't truly die, they transform. They become spirits, guardians, presences that continue to influence the living world. Creating a permanent stone monument could be a way to house or honor these ancestral spirits. The spheres as petrified ancestors, watching over descendants, present at community gatherings. Permanent, enduring, round like the cycle of life and death and rebirth. In this view, placing spheres near elite residences makes perfect sense. You're not just displaying wealth, you're keeping the ancestors close. Their spiritual power protects the family, legitimizes the lineage's authority, connects the present generation to a chain of power stretching back through time. When a chief died, perhaps a new sphere was carved. The larger the sphere, the more powerful the ancestor it represented. The most massive spheres, 25 tons of stone shaped into perfection, would house the spirits of the most revered leaders, the founding ancestors whose power still shaped the world of the living. Theory 6. All of the above. Here's the truth. Complex symbols in human cultures are almost never simple. A Christian cathedral is simultaneously a house of worship, a display of civic pride, a community gathering space, an architectural achievement, an economic statement, and a teaching tool filled with symbolic imagery. It's all of these things at once. Asking, what's the one purpose of a cathedral, misses the point. The stone spheres probably worked the same way. They were status symbols and markers of ancestral power and representations of cosmic order and boundary markers and sacred objects and artworks and economic statements. All at once, layered meanings that shifted depending on context, on who was looking, on what ceremony was being performed. A chief might commission a sphere to honor an ancestor, demonstrate his wealth, mark his territory, and participate in sacred creation, all simultaneously. These purposes weren't contradictory. They reinforced each other, creating a rich symbolic object that served multiple social functions. This is how human symbols work. They're dense, multivalent, irreducible to single explanations. The tragedy of lost context, what makes the sphere mystery so frustrating, is that the people who made them knew exactly what they meant. There was no mystery. A child in a Diquís community would grow up seeing spheres, learning their significance, understanding without being told what they represented. That knowledge was cultural water, so obvious, so omnipresent, that no one thought to explain it explicitly. Why would they? Everyone knew. And then the culture collapsed. The children who would have learned the meanings died in epidemics. The elders who could have taught them were gone. The continuous chain of cultural transmission, the conversation between generations, was severed. Within a few generations, even descendants of the sphere makers had only vague stories. Our ancestors made these. They were important. We're not sure why. And eventually, even the stories faded. By the time trained archaeologists arrived to ask questions, there was no one left who could answer them. Just the spheres themselves, perfect and silent. As you drift toward sleep, don't feel frustrated by the uncertainty. Let it be restful, this not knowing. The spheres have kept their secrets for 500 years. They can keep them a little longer. What matters is that they existed, that someone cared enough to make them, that the impulse to create something beautiful, something perfect, something lasting was strong enough to justify years of work. That impulse is what connects you to those ancient artisans across the centuries. You might not understand their specific beliefs, but you understand the need to make, to build, to leave something behind. The spheres are proof that this need is old, ancient, human. Rest now. Tomorrow, the spheres will still be there, still round, still waiting. Now comes the difficult part of the story, the part where carelessness and ignorance destroyed what centuries of care had preserved. The stone spheres survived Spanish conquest. They survived centuries of tropical storms, earthquakes, and jungle encroachment. They were made to last, and they did. What they couldn't survive was the 20th century. When the United Fruit Company arrived in the Diquís Delta in the 1930s, they saw land, valuable land, flat, fertile, perfect for banana plantations. The fact that this land contained archaeological treasures was irrelevant. The fact that indigenous peoples had shaped this landscape for over 1,000 years didn't matter. What mattered were bananas, cash crops, profit. The jungle was cleared, systematically, ruthlessly. Trees fell, undergrowth was burned, rivers were channeled into straight lines for irrigation. The land was replanted in neat rows of banana plants stretching to the horizon, and the stones were in the way. Workers discovered them constantly, sometimes emerging from soil as vegetation was cleared, sometimes hit by tractors, sometimes simply sitting there in the middle of where a new row of banana plants was supposed to go. The foreman issued simple instructions: move them, get them out of the way, do whatever it takes. Many were simply rolled into ditches or rivers. Massive spheres that had stood in place for centuries were unceremoniously shoved aside like any other obstruction. Others were broken. If a sphere was too large to move easily, workers would drill holes, insert dynamite charges, and blow it apart. The fragments were used as fill material for roads or building foundations. Stone is stone, after all. Why does it matter if it's round? Some were buried under new construction. Plantation buildings, processing facilities, roads, all built on top of archaeological sites that were never properly documented. The destruction was casual, thoughtless, complete. A few spheres became curiosities. Workers would roll smaller ones to plantation headquarters as lawn ornaments. Managers, thinking them interesting, would have larger ones transported to their personal homes as garden decorations. This sounds less destructive than dynamiting them, but it was still catastrophic from an archaeological perspective. Every time a sphere was moved, it lost its context. The relationship to other spheres, to nearby structures, to the landscape, all of that information was erased. An isolated sphere in a garden tells us almost nothing. A sphere in its original position, surrounded by others in a specific pattern, near particular buildings, at a certain elevation, that tells us volumes. By moving the spheres, even without damaging them physically, people destroyed the data that could have helped us understand their purpose. Local legends made things worse. Stories circulated that the spheres contained gold, that ancient peoples had hidden treasures inside these massive stones. All you had to do was crack one open, so people did, repeatedly. Throughout the mid-20th century, spheres were broken open by treasure hunters, convinced that enormous wealth awaited inside. They found nothing. The spheres are solid stone, no hollow chambers, no gold, no jewels, no treasure, except the stones themselves. But by the time the treasure hunters realized this, the damage was done. Dozens of spheres were destroyed for nothing, blown apart, smashed, reduced to rubble in pursuit of gold that never existed. Doris Stone, the archaeologist we mentioned earlier, documented much of this destruction in the 1940s. Her reports are heartbreaking. She describes walking through plantations and seeing fragments of spheres half buried in roadbeds. She notes locations where workers told her spheres had recently been destroyed. She catalogs the few that remained intact, often with notes like partially destroyed by dynamite or rolled into river, current location unknown. In one particularly devastating passage, she describes a group of aligned spheres that had been among the best preserved examples. Workers had dynamited several of them the week before her arrival. She could still see the blast marks on the fragments. Reading her reports, you can feel her frustration, her sense of racing against time to document what remained before it too was lost. She managed to save some information, measurements, photographs, descriptions of contexts before they were destroyed. But it was a small fraction of what had existed just decades earlier. Things began to change slowly in the latter half of the 20th century. As archaeology matured as a discipline, as public awareness of cultural heritage grew, people started to recognize that the spheres were valuable. not as raw stone, not as obstacles, but as irreplaceable artifacts from a vanished culture. Some spheres were moved carefully this time to museums. The National Museum of Costa Rica in San Jose has several on display. They sit on pedestals, lit dramatically, with information placards explaining their significance. Others were placed in public spaces. Town squares in Costa Rican cities feature spheres as symbols of indigenous heritage. They've become icons, representations of pre-Columbian sophistication and artistry. In 2014, the remaining sphere sites areas where multiple spheres exist in something approaching their original context were designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This designation brought international attention, protective regulations, and funding for preservation and research. But it was too late to undo the damage. Most spheres had already been moved or destroyed. Of the estimated 300 that existed, only a fraction remain in their original positions. Most of the best documented arrangements were destroyed before archaeologists could properly study them. Today, if you visit Costa Rica, you can see spheres in various states of preservation. Some sit in front of government buildings, symbols of national identity. Others are in museums, objects of study and display. A few are on private property, purchased by collectors or inherited with land, and a handful, perhaps 24, remain in the jungle, at sites now protected and managed as archaeological parks. These are the most valuable, scientifically speaking. They're the ones that still offer hope of understanding the original contexts, the patterns, the purposes. But even these are threatened. Climate change affecting rainfall patterns and vegetation. Stone lasts a long time, but not forever. Especially not when exposed to tropical weather without the protective context of the cultural landscape that originally surrounded them. The story of the spheres is, in many ways, the story of archaeology itself. The tension between development and preservation, the tragedy of destruction before documentation, the race to save what remains before it's too late. It's also a reminder of how fragile cultural heritage is. These massive stones, some weighing 25 tons, seem permanent, indestructible. And yet, within a few decades of intensive agriculture and casual vandalism, the majority were destroyed or displaced beyond recovery. What survived did so largely by accident. Because someone thought a sphere looked interesting and left it alone. Because a plantation manager wanted a curiosity for his lawn. Because a few researchers cared enough to push for protection before absolutely everything was lost. The spheres that remain are survivors. Refugees from a campaign of unintentional cultural erasure. They sit in museums and parks, ambassadors from a vanished world, bearing messages we can still only partly read. As you lie there in the darkness, imagine walking through a Costa Rican archaeological park. Trees overhead filter the sunlight. The air is warm, heavy with moisture, and there, ahead on the path, sitting exactly where it was placed 700 years ago, is a stone sphere, 2 meters in diameter, perfectly round. Its surface slightly weathered now, but still smooth enough to reflect the dappled light. You reach out though, visitors aren't supposed to touch and place your palm against the stone. It's cool, solid, real. Somewhere, an archaeologist is measuring it with laser scanners, documenting every millimeter, building a digital model that will survive even if the physical stone doesn't. Somewhere, a preservation specialist is assessing the site, planning how to protect this sphere from erosion for another few centuries. Somewhere, a student is writing a thesis about sphere distribution patterns, trying to extract meaning from incomplete data. The spheres have survived this long. With care, maybe they'll survive a while longer. Sleep now, knowing that some things endure. Not everything, but some things. What do the stone spheres mean to us now? Here, in the 21st century, when we can manufacture perfect spheres in factories, when we have laser-guided machines that can carve stone with micron-level precision, why do these ancient objects still fascinate us? The answer lies not in what they are, but in what they represent. The spheres are proof of something we forget too easily. Human capability doesn't require modern technology. Intelligence, creativity, problem-solving, these are ancient. They're built into our species. They existed long before circuit boards and steel mills. When you look at a stone sphere, you're seeing evidence of minds as sharp as yours, hands as skilled as any modern craftsperson's, working within different constraints but achieving results that still impress us today. This is humbling. We like to think of progress as linear, as continuous improvement. We imagine our ancestors as less capable, less intelligent, stumbling toward enlightenment through trial and error. The spheres say, no, they were us, fully human, fully capable, just working with different tools. The spheres also remind us that purpose and meaning matter more than efficiency. No one needed perfect stone spheres. They didn't improve survival rates. They didn't make hunting easier or crops more bountiful. But the people who made them needed them. Needed to create something beautiful, something permanent, something that embodied their values and beliefs in physical form. We do the same thing. We build cathedrals and monuments and artworks and parks. We write symphonies that no one asked for. We carve sculptures, write poems, choreograph dances. We create far beyond any practical necessity because creation itself is a human need. The sphere makers understood this 800 years ago. They invested years of labor into objects whose only purpose was to be perfect, to stand as testimonies to human dedication and skill. In a world increasingly dominated by efficiency metrics and cost-benefit analyses, there's something profoundly moving about people who decided that perfection was worth the cost, regardless of practical return. For Costa Rica, the spheres have become national symbols. They appear on postcards, in advertisements, on government documents. They're used to represent indigenous heritage, pre-Columbian sophistication, national pride. This symbolic use is both appropriate and complicated. Appropriate because the spheres genuinely represent an impressive indigenous achievement. Complicated because modern Costa Rica is a nation built partly on the displacement and marginalization of indigenous peoples, using their artifacts as symbols while their descendants struggle with poverty and cultural erasure is a tension that Costa Rican society continues to grapple with. Still, the UNESCO World Heritage designation has had positive effects. It's brought funding for archaeological research, employment for local communities as site guardians and guides, and increased awareness of indigenous history. Young Costa Ricans learning about the spheres might develop deeper appreciation for pre-Columbian cultures. They might question the historical narrative that civilization arrived with Europeans. They might recognize that their land has a history far deeper than colonization. For archaeologists, the spheres remain an active research frontier. New spheres are still being discovered. Sometimes in museum storage rooms, misidentified or forgotten decades ago. Sometimes in private collections. Occasionally in the jungle, revealed by erosion or changing vegetation. Each discovery adds data. Each measurement contributes to our understanding of manufacturing techniques, size distributions, regional variations. Modern technology is opening new avenues of investigation. 3D scanning creates perfect digital models that can be shared globally, analyzed by researchers who never physically visit the sites. Geochemical analysis of the stone can identify specific quarry sources, mapping trade networks and resource extraction patterns. Some researchers are using experimental archaeology, attempting to carve their own spheres using only Stone Age technology. These experiments are teaching us about the challenges, the time required, the techniques that work, and those that don't. We're slowly reverse engineering the lost knowledge. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to appreciate the extraordinary skill involved. The spheres have also captured public imagination beyond academia. They appear in documentaries, podcasts, YouTube videos. They're written about in books about ancient mysteries and lost civilizations. Unfortunately, they've also attracted pseudoscientific attention, claims that they're evidence of ancient aliens, that they were made by lost Atlantean civilizations, that they contain hidden codes or messages. These theories are easy to dismiss if you understand the archaeological context. But they persist because they tap into something emotionally compelling, the desire to believe that the past holds secrets, that there's hidden knowledge waiting to be discovered, that mysteries might have spectacular explanations. The truth that the spheres were made by indigenous peoples using sophisticated techniques developed over generations is actually more interesting than any alien theory. But it requires understanding context, appreciating skill, recognizing that primitive peoples were nothing of the sort. As education about the spheres improves, as more people learn the real story, the pseudoscientific theories may fade. The genuine mystery, the specific purposes, the exact techniques, the cultural meanings is compelling enough without inventing fantastic explanations. What can we learn from the spheres as we lie here in the darkness, drifting towards sleep? Perhaps this, that beauty and precision are their own justification, that human hands guided by patient minds can achieve extraordinary things, that cultures we've never heard of, speaking languages that died centuries ago, created works that still move us. Perhaps this, that destruction is easy and preservation is hard, that we've lost so much knowledge, so much heritage, to carelessness and ignorance, that protecting what remains matters. Perhaps that mystery doesn't always need resolution. Some questions might never be fully answered, and that's okay. The spheres can remain partly mysterious, inviting wonder rather than demanding explanation. Or perhaps simply that we are part of a long human story. The same species that carved perfect spheres from stone is the species that sent robots to Mars, that split the atom, that mapped the human genome. We've always been this capable. The tools change, the underlying creativity and intelligence remain constant. Picture one more time a stone sphere in the jungle. This one has never been moved. It sits exactly where it was placed 700 years ago, in a clearing slowly being reclaimed by forest. Vines curl around its base. Moss grows in the microscopic depressions on its surface. Tree roots reach toward it, not yet disturbing it, but slowly, patiently, over centuries they will. Nothing lasts forever, not even stone. But for now, in this moment, the sphere endures, perfectly round, impossibly smooth. A message from hands long turned to dust to whoever might find it and wonder. You are that someone, lying in your bed, thousands of miles and hundreds of years removed from the people who shaped this stone, and yet connected by curiosity, by wonder, by the recognition that something here matters, even if you can't quite articulate why. The sphere doesn't need explanation to be meaningful. It exists, it's beautiful, it's perfect. That's enough. As your breathing slows and your thoughts begin to blur, let the image of the sphere remain, a still point in a turning world, a marker of patience, skill, and care. Let it remind you that some efforts are worth making even when the purpose isn't entirely clear. That creating something lasting, whether a stone sphere or a kind word or a moment of genuine connection, is a deeply human act. The sphere makers are gone. Their language is silent. Their beliefs are mysteries. But their work remains, bearing witness to the truth that humans have always reached for perfection, have always tried to leave something behind, have always cared about more than simple survival. You carry that same impulse. You're part of the same story. Rest now. The spheres have waited this long. They'll wait a little longer, and tomorrow, perhaps, you'll see something in the world, a curve, a pattern, a moment of unexpected beauty, and you'll remember. Someone, somewhere, made perfect spheres from stone because it mattered to them, and that's enough. Sleep well. If you found this journey through deep time meaningful, consider leaving a comment about where in the world you're listening from. The thought of people across the globe falling asleep to the same ancient mystery is its own kind of connection across distance and time. Good night, wherever you are.